Hello and welcome to your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. And today we have another exciting program for you. And I've got some guests who I'll introduce to you in just a minute. But first, I just want to give you a little bit of information here as to what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're having a panel discussion on Citizens Review Board. And I want to say that from my standpoint, when I was the president of the Wichita Racial Profiling Board, we advocated for a independent civilian oversight board. Okay. Now, that was under the former police chief, Gordon Ramsay, and Captain Doug Nolte, and we also switched this to the city manager. Now, in 2019, I had a meeting at Evergreen Park with former Chief Ramsey and former Captain Doug Nolte, and they were there to tell us that the city had finalized a citizens review board. And they shared with us the ordinance that they had pertaining to this new board. Now, when I read the ordinance, I found that it was lacking in 2 or 3 different areas. And the areas that it was lacking in led me to believe that it was not going to be effective. And I stated that to the former chief and his captain, Doug Nolte. I also shared that information later with members of the public. And I advised them not to get too excited because what they thought they were going to be getting, they were not going to be getting. And here, after 5 years, I think I've proven to be correct. And I think a lot of people would agree with me, including several members who were former members of this Citizens Review Board. Now, real quickly, let me just share with you what I felt was lacking and what would prevent it from being effective. Number one, we advocated for an independent board, which would be independent of any political affiliations or law enforcement affiliations. We did not get that. Secondly, we asked for a subpoena power, okay? And of course, obviously, we did not get that. Now, I think most legal scholars will tell you that a citizens review board that is not independent and does not have subpoena power doesn't have much of a chance of being effective because they're nothing more than a review board. They will review what has already transpired with no opportunity to make any corrections, to change anything, or to speak up for the citizens. And that's who the board is supposed to be responsible to. So let me just tell you the difference between a review board and an oversight board. And I'll tell you, just to give you an example, Chicago has an oversight board. And here's the difference. It says the Civilian Office of Police Accountability conducts investigations of certain complaints of police misconduct, including excessive force. The Chicago Police Board is an independent civilian body that decides disciplinary cases involving Chicago police officers. The 9 members of the board are private citizens appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the city council. Now, the Public Safety Inspector General initiates reviews and audits of the city's police and police accountability functions with the goal of enhancing the effectiveness of public safety, protecting civil liberties and civil rights, and increasing the public's confidence in the system. Now, from my standpoint, that is not what we have here in Wichita. So now, with that said, let me introduce you to my panel. We have with us Mr. Odell Harris Jr., who is a longtime member of the Citizens Review Board and is currently the chairman of that board. Welcome, Mr. Harris.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. And we also have a former member who recently left the board, Ms. Twyla Purdy, who served 1 term. Is that correct, Ms. Purdy?
Actually, it was a little less than a term, but yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the show. Glad you
Thank
could
you.
participate.
Thank you.
And finally, we have here a complainant, a citizen who feels that she's not received the justice, the confidence of the board, the fairness of the board, nor has she received the transparency she feels that she deserves from the board. And her name is Danielle Sellers. Ms. Sellers, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, so now let me ask you, based on the statement that I made opening, Mr. Harris, do you have any comments about what I said?
First of all, thank you, sir, for this wonderful platform that you share. As far as the citizens' voices of Wichita, you give them an opportunity to share their convictions and their concerns for our city. Thank you for that, sir. What I will say is, as far as our Citizens Review Board is concerned, I do believe that there are some things we are lacking, and I have been in conversation since I've been on the board, and now that I'm in a position where I can also offer maybe my voice to create change. I have spoken to those that we would call the higher ups, and said, hey, there's some things we need to look into as far as being able to maybe, I don't know if we're ever going to get subpoena power. I have no idea. But there are some things I wish, I hope, and I'm working toward for us to be a more official board. Yes, sir. I will say that.
Okay. So let me ask you, have you asked specifically for subpoena power for this board?
I have not, but I have not in those words. I have asked if we would be able to get some better, some more power, have some more tea, you will, and what the so I'm working toward that. Okay, I'm on my computer now, so it should sound a little better.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Is that better for you?
Right now, you don't have video on.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, this whole time I've been working toward getting this computer up. Okay, there we go.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
All right, sir. I'm off my cell phone. I'm on the computer. But yeah, I have not asked for subpoena power. I have not asked for that as of yet. I want to be as transparent with you, Mr. Barfield, Ms. Twyla, and Ms. Danielle, as possible. I have not asked for subpoena power as of yet.
Okay, so you then admit that without subpoena power, you don't have any investigative powers. Is that correct?
Yep, we get what we are given.
Okay, now. So having said that, sir, do you feel that you can give the confidence to citizens that want to make complaints that their cases will be handled appropriately?
I feel like when I give them my word that I personally will go above and beyond to give them the best results possible, just like many of those who are on our board before that have now gone on. I know we gave our personal best for whatever that's worth. I will always take a complainant's word and their concerns and go above and beyond to try to get some kind of restorative solution. I'll choose the word restorative. That way, no one loses. Now, if the police are wrong, they're wrong. And I have stood for 7+ years on the board and with our citizens. If the police were wrong, they were wrong. But if the police were justified, I too echo those sentiments to say, hey, I didn't see anything wrong in this situation.
Okay, sir, but I want to be respectful to you, and I just want to say this. But you're basing that on information that has been given to you. In other words, you've heard one side of the story.
Yes,
and
sir.
You've based your decision on hearing one side of the story. How do you think that made someone like Ms. Sellers, who's not had an opportunity to present her side, and yet you're telling her, well, you have, I guess, from what I'm reading here on your November minutes, she's not ever, at this point, even been invited to come forward and state her case. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, she has not. She has Miss Danielle, I do remember you coming to a meeting, so I don't want to totally discard that. I think Danielle, Miss Sellers, can I call you Danielle? Is that okay? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, okay, Danielle. So I do believe that Miss Danielle has come to a meeting. I have heard her voice and things of that nature. Now, the board has not officially, in an official capacity, responded to Miss Sellers, Miss Danielle. That's my position in this moment. Not saying it's not in the works, but I will say the ball has been dropped on several occasions, and she deserves real time and a real conclusive response.
Okay,
If I could
And-
add, so we're right and wrong in two different ways. She did give a complete review and her point of view on one of her cases or one of the incidents. She has others that she had asked the Citizens Review Board to review, and she has not had the opportunity to present her point of view on those others. So yes, we're right and wrong because she has multiple incidences, hopefully that will be addressed by the Citizens Review Board.
Right. And I have, and I know this may not be the time for me to share this, but I have no problem with meeting with Miss Danielle. I have no problem with sitting down and sharing dialogue and taking her cares and concerns back to the board, back to the police department. I have no problem doing that. You know, I have not been in that position to be able to do such, but I have no problem doing it.
It's,
Yeah, because
well,
I
let me
believe,
first of all, let me go back. I'm gonna go to Ms. Sellers. Ms. Sellers, I want to find out from you, man. When did you first file your complaint?
the first time that I spoke with the CRB board was back in August of 2023.
Okay, that was that. Is that the place when you filed your complaint officially?
Yes, that was for police brutality and excessive force.
Okay, excessive force. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now that was in August. Here we are. This is April. Well, no, I'm so well. Tomorrow will be May. All right. Now that's plenty of time for them to address your complaints and your concerns. And I'm looking here at a Citizens Review Board on Thursday of November the 30th, 2023, when they state that basically you came forward, but you have not had an update on your case that you'd asked the board to review. You've not received a letter or invitation inviting you to the meeting where an update regarding your case would be discussed. Is that appropriate, Chairman Harris?
So the reports that I got in dialogue, going back and forth with those who are our governing bodies, have stated to me that we don't necessarily have to, and this is no disrespect to Miss Sellers, but we don't have to send a letter back. That's my understanding. I'm currently investigating. I'm currently looking into what we need to do as far as statute and as far as what is right. Now, understand, some things are done in malice and some things are done in ignorance. Some things I'm just now getting acclimated to. So some things I'm ignorant to as far as, and that's not a derogatory word, because I'm learning what and what not to do. I'm not at all proficient in all the laws and statutes and things of that nature. I am learning every day, being the chairman, trying to better the seat, not just myself, but better the seat. So what I will say is she has not received a letter as of yet. Now, it's underneath my guiding light, my guiding hand. Will she receive one? I do believe she's going to get a letter. She should have had one a long time ago. There's been a draft or two done. I don't know what happened, what took place, why she has not gotten that letter. But then in reading, I think Dr. Chappell put one together, and I think Dr. Harrison put one together. I've had an opportunity to look over both of those letters, and I think they need to kind of be married together so there can be a very conclusive response. But I personally don't want to send a letter out, and I have not heard from Miss Sellers. I want to hear her cares, her concerns, and things of that nature. And then, as the chairperson in this moment, I'll be able to share
some light from an enlightened position, if you will. So I do believe that there's some hope on the horizon from my standpoint. And again, I'll apologize on behalf of our board, Ms. Sellers, that you have not received the attention that quite frankly, as a citizen, that you deserve. Absolutely.
Okay, now let me just say this. In this November meeting, it says here that as of this meeting, no topic has been placed on the agenda for review. Now, from August, let's just say until November. She said the 24th, so we're talking about 2 months. Well,
At
actually,
least, yeah.
3 months.
Yeah, almost
Is that not sufficient time, sir? I mean, are complaints normally handled in this manner?
I would say it should be. It should be enough time. Yeah.
Mr. Barfield, if I could jump to the defense of Pastor Harris, he only became the chair, was it the January meeting?
Yeah.
Odell, yeah. So the things that happened up until January, I don't want to see Odell on the hot seat for, because he had no bearing, he had no control of the meeting, no control of the agenda at that time. But since January, and then we didn't have a meeting in February, so I would suspect he's been trying to get his legs under him.
Yeah.
I just wanted to provide that clarification.
I appreciate it. And again, Mr. Barfield, you're right. We got to get on the good foot. You're right, sir. You're right.
Let me say this, Ms. Purdy, I appreciate that. However, Mr. Harris, as he stated previously, has been on the board since its inception.
Yes, sir.
I'm not holding him responsible for everything that happened, okay, as a chairman. But I'm just talking about from the board in particular. Is this the manner in which complaints are handled by the board, regardless as to who's chairman? Is this the way that complaints are handled from citizens by this board? That's what I'm asking. He's been there since the inception, he stated. He knows how these cases have been handled previously. While he was not the chairman, I respect that. And I expect the fact that he has stated that he intends, but I'm going to tell you that he intends to seek changes. But I'm going to tell you my standby. This board was never, ever designed to represent the citizens. It's designed to represent the police department.
Okay.
And citizens are treated like stepchildren, just like Miss Sellers had. She's not the only one. So that's where I'm coming from. This is not the appropriate way in which you handle complaints. I mean, how can you instill confidence and trust in your citizens if you're going to ignore when they attempt to make a complaint or attempt to have their voices heard? That's what I'm getting at. And even if you hear it, and look, let me just say this. I'm not speaking for James Barfield. I have spoken with several members, former members of this board, and asked why they left. And almost without exception, it's because of the fact they felt like they were wasting their time. Okay? They felt like they were not getting cooperation from WPD. And I think that in some cases, at least one case I know, the chief of the WPD has told board members not to talk to certain other board members. Now, that's not transparency. And that's not the way you handle these situations. The number one, from my standpoint, the number one objective here should be to be transparent and be responsible and be accountable to the private citizens, not the police department, not any political party, no political member, to the citizens of Sedgwick County. And that's where we're falling very short. And I continue to say that you cannot do an adequate job of being responsible and accountable if you cannot investigate, you cannot talk to police officers, okay? So you have to take their side after they've made their decision through professional standards or whatever, and you don't get the other side before a decision is made. And once a decision is made, the Citizens Review Board has no power, no authority, and no money to bring about any change. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Harris. You've been there since the inception. Approximately how many complaints have you fielded as a board member?
So let me answer it like this. Ms. Sellers' case is one of many complaints I'm sure the board has received, but hers is unique because in all the other, and I don't mean unique like stuff doesn't happen, but in any of the other complaints that we received in my time, to my knowledge, we've never had to, I don't think we've ever overturned. I don't think we've ever had a situation where we felt like something has happened to the point to where we needed to issue a letter or something of that nature. To my knowledge, it's not happened. We've reviewed many cases. We've looked over several different cases. We've made suggestions. We've done several different things. But in this situation, this is the first time that our board has looked to construct a letter or anything of that nature. Also, I will say, in some of the complaints we received, we've asked for people to come in and they didn't show up. I will say that. I know that to be fact. I know that to be true. So again, in this moment, Ms. Sellers' case to me is one that has really drawn our attention to, other than some stuff that was internal with the police department, but never with a citizen, right? So I think that's how I'll answer that question.
Okay, so my next question to you, sir, is I don't know, and you didn't basically answer, and I don't know if you can answer or not. But when I asked you about how many complaints have you fielded since you've been on the board, and you've been on since its inception, you stated. So my next question is, how many cases have you been able to overturn a decision that was rendered by the Professional Standards Board?
I don't have that number. I don't think. Charlie, do you remember any that we've had to overturn?
Well, not while I was on the board, but I do remember Denny put together kind of a review of multiple years of everything that was accomplished, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe there was one. I don't know that was actually overturned, but that the board provided a response to, and it was before my time.
Right.
So there aren't a lot. And Mr. Barfield, so, and I know you know, I don't know that your listeners know, there's like two types of complaints. There's the ones that the board members pick out from a list of PSB incidents. And that's the majority of what gets reviewed. The vast majority, would you agree, Odell? And then there's very few where citizens actually don't agree with how their incident was handled and then ask the CRB. There just aren't that many, unfortunately. And that's what I'm hoping, that I know Odell is committed to, making sure word gets out to the community so they can file those complaints. So without, I don't have that document in front of me about what the number has been.
And so Mr. Barfield, what I will say when it relates to cases that we looked over, and I hate to bring this up, but the texting case, that was a closed case. That case had gone post discipline, and it was given to us as a synopsis, a two or three liner synopsis. And I actually picked the case. I said, no, let's get some more information on this. And we know that blew up. So we do look at these cases. We do look intently, but like it has just been stated, there's not a lot of them that citizens are saying, no, that's wrong. I didn't appreciate that. When they go to professional standards, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 times, when they go to professional standards has to send them. I think it's something that they have to do. They have to send them a letter and say, hey, we looked over your case. This is what we found. Then they have the option, the opportunity, and if they have the desire, they can come before us and we can look back into it. That has not happened a lot of times. There's a couple cases now, a couple individuals who are asking us and they're coming to the meetings. They're being very diligent about seeing if we can look over their cases, maybe one or two. But other than that, Miss Sellers and this other individual, I won't name their name because they're not here and I don't have the permission to use their name. But other than that, only those two. Now, what I can say is, as it relates to the police department, and we're looking at some of those post-discipline issues with the police officers within the police department, we've overturned several of those. We've asked to say, no, we don't agree with that. That doesn't sound right. That needs more, more meat to it and things of that nature. So absolutely, yeah, we've done that on occasion or two. Absolutely. So I will submit that in this moment that there is some more further work that needs to be done, but it's unique. We've only had Miss Sellers and, like I say, one or two other individuals that have asked us to look over their case file.
Okay, let me just say this. And the reason I asked that question is because from the ordinance pertaining to your board, you don't have the authority to overturn any of those cases. Okay, now let me just I'm going to go and talk to you a little bit more about the difference between a review board and an effective oversight board. Now, and most legal scholars will tell you this. There's been studies, the ACLU will tell you this. And I'm going to read this to you. The most effective citizen review boards, like the one in Washington, D.C., have these operational characteristics. Number one, independence from law enforcement, which is necessary to ensure unbiased reviews of cases. Number two, authority to either discipline officers or recommend discipline of officers that department leaders will then enforce. Number three, sufficient resources of funding and manpower to effectively oversee departmental activities. You guys don't have any of those three. Okay? And that's where the problem lies, sir. And when you talk about the fact that some people don't come before you, it's because of the fact it's the same thing as why a lot of people don't file excessive use against officers, because they've seen a pattern of nothing happening. So they don't have any confidence that them reporting their case is going to be any different. It's the same thing we're dealing with right here, right now. If somebody here is looking in and they see that Ms. Sellers filed a complaint back in August of 23, and here we are in, say, in May of 24, and she's never had an opportunity, okay, to fully present her case, and then have you guys look into it, which you don't have the authority to do. You don't have no authority to go and investigate the officers that she might name in her complaint, okay? You don't have the authority to overturn any decision. In other words, you don't have the authority to sustain, okay, or deny her complaint.
And
See?
Mr. Barfield, if I could clarify that, I did speak in an open session, of which I think that's what Twyla was speaking about, where I did present, my case to the board. With all due respect, Odell was not in person at that time, where the video was submitted, and everybody watched it, including the police were in there when I had to give an open statement because their summary did not match up to my story. So I think that was a part of the issue, is because the police, their summaries are not adding up with the full story. So had I not showed up and had I not came and spoken, the board would have not, known the whole story, the facts. So that did take place. And, Odell's coming in and because there's all new board members, I think it's unfair to me that they want me to redo everything I've already done. And it is a thing where, citizens, this is where, they do give up because they don't feel like anything is changing or anything is happening. There's no transparency. And now I have to catch up, the new board members of, what's going on when I've already done that like you said, back in August of last year. So,
Well, let me say this, and I want to say this, and in particular to Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris,
Yes, sir.
the reason I'm posing these questions to you here, sir, I understand that you are here speaking for the board. You're not speaking for Odell Harris. You're speaking for the board. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to say, so I don't want you to take these things personal because I'm talking
no.
about the board. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about you. I'm talking about the board since 2019 and the board's action and inaction since 2019. Nothing about you personally, the board, and you as the chairman are here speaking for the board, sir.
Yes, sir. No
I
problem.
want you to understand that. Okay.
Oh, no. My shoulders are big. I'm okay.
Okay.
I appreciate you, Mr. Barfield. You know, right is right and wrong is wrong. Let's talk facts. We're okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're okay.
So all I'm saying is that I think that the citizens of Wichita and Sedgwick County are being dealt a short hand by this board under its present makeup. And until you can change the ordinance to put in some protective ordinances in that ordinance to make it more user friendly for the citizens that file complaints, sir. Because there's no need for them to, if they feel like some of the former members feel like, when the former members are saying that they feel like they're wasting their time, okay, why is it that a complainant wouldn't feel like they're wasting their time? And that's what we've been getting. And that's what I'm here to deal with. Is this was not ever designed. Let me just explain one thing to you. As I said to you in the meeting there on Thursday, if this ordinance and this board had been designed to be effective, the loudest voice in the state, I will say, certainly in the city, would have been the voice of the FOP, because they would have considered you as a threat to the way they do business. They've not muttered one single word since this ordinance was put together. And that tells me all I need to know about how effective it's going to be, because they're not saying a word. They're completely satisfied. Now, to give you an example, let's talk about the officers that was involved in the text messaging scandal. Okay?
Mhm.
So those officers, for the most part, are still on the force. None of them were ever fired. Nobody took action. Did the Citizen Review Board? Okay.
So, so the originator of one of the text messages was actually one of my friends. And he was fired. He was fired. Sadly to say, I think the buck might stop about there. But one person, the originator of the message, was terminated. And he happened to be a black officer, but he was terminated.
And I know who you're talking about.
All right.
And I understand that, but
Okay.
let's take a look. All he did was share. He didn't participate in the texting. Okay, but all he did was share this with somebody else. The people
Right.
that participated, the people that made the disparaging comments and statements, okay,
Still on the force.
still on the force, sir.
I'm
Okay.
running with you.
Now, what kind of confidence does that give the John Doe citizen to have in his police department and to have in a citizens review board who is supposed to be protecting them, okay, and providing them safety, and they feel like make them feel comfortable, then coming to you to file a complaint when they see this kind of action? It seems like the police department, the city, is condoning this because of the fact that nothing was done. I mean, now I don't know about the department's policy, but I would think the department would have a policy that was violated regarding their internet usage. But nobody was fired, so apparently they don't have a policy.
Okay.
So that looks bad. Okay.
Mm.
But these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. You've got one of the people that was involved was promoted. You know, I mean, you know, what kind of confidence does this give? What kind of a message does this send? You know?
Yes, sir.
So, you know, that's where we're at. And I guess now we have Dr. Walt Chappell with us.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, glad to have you, sir. We're just discussing about the effectiveness, or should I say ineffectiveness, of the Citizens Review Board, and how the citizens don't have any faith nor confidence in the Wichita Police Department, nor the Citizens Review Board when it comes to being taken seriously when they file a complaint. They're not heard. And here we have Miss Sellers, who's a guest who you knew about. You were on the force at the time I'm not the force, but the board at the time she filed a complaint. So you know Miss Sellers' case. Miss Sellers has received no justice from the police nor the Citizens Review Board.
And Dr. Harrison had prepared a statement to give to her back in October. We've had since October his draft to send to her as our report, which found that the police department had no justification whatsoever to arrest her, and that they withheld information from our board about why she was actually asking for their help, which was to find her child, an 8-year-old son, that had disappeared from a park. So she was desperate to try to get their attention. They arrested her on false pretenses, as far as I could tell, but they never mentioned that to our board. And then they canceled the meetings in January, February, and March, basically for any of us to go into executive session to finish our response to her. So now they're wanting to say, well, now that we've got a new board, basically cleaned house, got everybody off the board that would ask any questions, we're going to go ahead and ask her to come back and redo the whole case. And some of the people on the new board are saying, well, we shouldn't even give her a letter because we should only be responding to the police chief and let him decide what to do. My God, what is the purpose of a citizen review board if you can't communicate with the citizens about their case and you don't even let them know that they can come and be present when we review it?
Well, you're late, Mr. Chappell, but basically that's been the context of my comments here, is the fact that people don't have any faith and trust in the police department nor the Citizens Review Board. They don't have any confidence that their voice is going to be heard, okay, based on what they've seen. And when you have a police chief that is telling members of the Citizens Review Board not to communicate with another member, how is that transparency, and how is that initiating any trust and confidence in the board? The board, it appears, is working for the police. That's who they're responsive to, not the citizen.
Mr. Barfield, I think I'm a little ignorant to the fact the police told someone not to talk to someone else.
That's what's been reported. The police chief, yes, told them not to talk, to communicate with Dr. Chappell.
Oh,
am I correct on that, Mr. Chappell?
Absolutely correct. In fact, when we asked the police department to provide the racial profiling data on traffic stops, we were told, okay, we can provide that information, but you're going to get what we give you. And don't talk to Dr. Chappell, don't talk to anybody else. We're just going to do our own thing. And when they provided the data almost a year ago, they're supposed to do it quarterly. But when they provided the data, it was so incomplete, it was almost a farce. But it did show that you're twice as likely to be stopped in Wichita if you're black. Now, the rest of the story is that when we have cases that are coming forward to us, I ask for a case to be reviewed that I'm not sure if Odell was there at the time, but it was a black man in Old Town. And he was arrested after they were closed down the street. But at least 5 or 6 police officers around him did not have body cameras on. We could not see anything other than the fact that he was not just touched on the shoulder, but he was pushed to the ground. And after they pushed him to the ground, then they arrested him. On what pretext? Now, this young man has an arrest record. We're trying to find out more about that, but we won't get the information. We also had a case over on Rock Road where a gentleman, obviously a retired or elderly white man, was traveling on Rock Road, was pulled over, and immediately the officer came up to him and started shouting, "Get out of the car, get out of the car." And I tried to get some information about that case and find out who was arrested. He was arrested, and he was also charged. And at a traffic stop, you're supposed to provide that information to the public. They won't do it. And the chief sent me a letter specifically saying, you cannot get this information. It's privileged, and we're not going to let any of our officers talk to you. So this is not any way to try to be transparent or accountable.
Mr. Chapel, you were a little late, but you didn't hear. I first started off the meeting by telling people that when I was the president of the Wichita Racial Profiling Board, we advocated for an independent citizens oversight board, not a review board, an oversight board. We didn't get that. Okay. And this board and this ordinance that pertains to this board clearly strips this board of any authority, any power to do an effective job for the citizens of Wichita. And we've seen that now for over 5 years. This is no way to run an organization that is trying to instill trust and confidence in our city or our law enforcement.
I agree. And what we don't have is the who, what, when, and where. As a board, we're not given the who. All that information is redacted. Both the person that filed the complaint, we don't let them know that we're going to review it, so they can't even come. They don't even know we're reviewing their complaint. And the officers that are involved, all that information is crossed out. The where isn't identified. They cross that out as well. And the what took place, well, that's very, very slanted. Many times the video does not match at all. What we find out later was the actual complaint. We are under the impression, basically from Jensen Hughes' reports, we're supposed to at least receive the written report of the complaint from the person that filed it. We're not even getting that. So we don't have but just the police department's summary and 2 or 3 sentences of what they say took place. That's not transparent, and it certainly doesn't allow us to hold anybody accountable.
And as I just mentioned just a few moments ago, Mr. Chappell, basically, you guys, the Citizens Review Board, are presented a case with only one side of the story being told or heard. That's the police side. In these cases, you don't hear from the complainant until after the case has been closed.
Well, if then, I mean, many times the complainant doesn't even know we're holding any review of their case. We can pull the case, we can ask for a review in executive session, but they're not there. We never hear it. And on the case of Danielle, she came forward. Fortunately, we heard both sides of it, and it painted a whole different picture. We've had a case like that one in Old Town where they were saying, well, we just touched the guy on the shoulder and he wouldn't go home, and we had to arrest him. Well, my God, when you look at the video, they pushed him 3 or 4 times. He's trying to back up and get away, basically move with the crowd, and they push him to the ground. And then they arrest him. And then, of course, they impound his car. He has to get it out of impound and pay for towing fees. My God, the whole thing escalates rather than de-escalate. But what they shared with us was they just touched him on the shoulder and he wouldn't comply, and so we had to arrest him. That was absolutely false. And we can't get that case reviewed and sent to that person. They keep coming up with one reason after another why it can't come back on the agenda.
And so therefore, the private citizen that files a complaint is the victim of smoke and mirrors. Okay? And who does that fall on? That falls upon the Citizens Review Board. Because they don't have any authority, they don't have any power to do or change anything. Now, I want to ask Mr. Odell one question. Mr. Harris, what is the budget for the Citizens Review Board?
We don't have one, not that I know of.
Okay. Now, so therefore, sir, what kind of job and how effective can you be without any kind of budget, any means to initiate an investigation, to inquire into these offers? Because look, It's a known fact that officers will lie. Officers will cover up. Officers will tell a different story than the real story. Many times, you're not going to get the real story unless you have a video or you have some kind of concrete witness, whatever, for these stories. It happens all the time. And so when you're sitting there, you have to make a decision based on what the police have told you without hearing the other side. I'm telling you, it leaves an awful lot to be desired from this body. And that's where I'm at. Now, and I understand that there are people out there that will tell you that this board is making a difference. But this board in 5 years has never issued a public report stating their accomplishments and their track record in representing the citizens that file complaints. Not one time in 5 years. That's not transparency. That is not showing to me that you guys have anything that you really want the public to know, because it's all bad. It sounds like you're hiding something. And I'm sure that's not the case, but it looks bad, sir. Right? And that's where we're coming from. And the only way things are going to change is the members of this board have to bring about a change. And I don't know how you do it, but you got to bring about a change to this ordinance that you're operating under. Because as long as this ordinance is like it is today, there's never going to be any effectiveness, there's never going to be any trust, and there's never going to be any confidence placed in the Citizens Review Board. So, okay, Walt, do you have anything else to say? Twyla, do you have anything else to say?
Well, I'm concerned about the new board. Twyla's not there, I'm not there, and they got one of the other people to resign who's actually doing a tremendous job. They've hired Wichita State to do a strategic plan, which is, in my mind, just totally inappropriate at this point. They're not following the law, which is basically what was passed back in 2005. That's the basis for this ordinance. The ordinance isn't being followed. And now the new people that have been appointed, most of them have a background that involves the police department or law enforcement. One is a former judge, one's a prosecuting attorney, another is a former sheriff, another worked for the police department in the city of Wichita. I don't know what Adele can do as one man. I mean, he's got a hell of a job to try to steer the ship a little bit here, but there's going to be an election for a new president coming up here, I would assume, sometime in June. So we're putting a lot of pressure on Odell, but this man is, kind of like a Lone Ranger now. He's the only one that's been there for a while. I have a lot of respect for Odell, but I want to make sure that the new people are actually taking this serious. They're not just going to give a rubber stamp to the police department.
Well, you were not here, but I stated earlier that basically what I'm saying might sound like an attack on Mr. Harris, but it is not. I'm here to address the Citizens Review Board in its entirety. And I appreciate and understand the fact that Mr. Harris has been the chairman for a short period of time. But he's here to speak for the board as the chairman. Now, also, you mentioned Mr. Berger. I reached out to Mr. Berger because I did want Mr. Berger to be here, okay? But I didn't hear back from him. So, I didn't have an opportunity to have him here. But basically, what I'm saying is that, and what you just stated about the makeup of the board, there are members on this board and have been since 2019 that basically many other boards would never have members, current or former members of the police department or law enforcement. They would never have an employee of the city or county on that board. This board is supposed to be made up of independent, private citizens. It is not to be responsible to the law enforcement, Wichita PD, the FOP, no political entity or person. That's not the primary objective of an effective oversight board. You notice I didn't say anything about review, who are working after the fact. So there you have it. And the fact of the matter is that, as I've said before, when I make my comments, I'm going on what I have researched. And part of that research is talking to past members, former members of this board who have stated that they felt like they were wasting their time. And that's why they're no longer members. Now, what happens is it makes it more difficult because there's been a consistent turnover of board members since 2019. And it appears that it's getting harder and harder to find people who are willing to serve on this board. Because prior to last week, you had, I believe, about 6 vacancies on this board. 6, maybe 7. Okay, many times, as you just stated, you didn't even have a quorum, so you couldn't have meetings. There's something wrong with this picture. And the citizens are being denied what they thought they were getting in 2019 when this board was formulated. And enough is enough. It's time for the people, the citizens, to know what the hell is going on and speak for change that will make this board responsive to and accountable to the private citizens who are being harassed, who are being beaten, who are being offended, who are being victims of excessive force, brutality, or whatever, by members of the Wichita Police Department. So, in closing, Mr. Harris, do you have any closing comments?
No, sir. Thank you for your knowledge, your love for your city, your community, and your desire to empower the citizens of our great city. And to you and Ms. Twyla and Dr. Chappell, and certainly to Ms. Danielle, I'm going to do everything within my power to assist in making our city better through transparency and try to, get some power for our board to be able to offer that kind of change and be able to speak on behalf of what I call the working class person in our city. And so absolutely, you all have my word in my heart that I'm going to, for as long as I sit where I sit, I'm gonna do the best I can with the powers that I have within me to better our board.
Thank you, sir. And just remember, I'm watching you. And I'm watching.
Oh, don't I know?
Okay. Ms. Trotter, do you have any closing comments?
Yes, actually, I could talk about the Citizens Review Board for an hour, but the closing comment I have is related to the ordinance. I would not leave it up to the CRB to lead the change to the ordinance. I think it has to be citizens. There's a lot of changes that need to be made. Over 2 years ago now, or maybe it's right about 2 years, members of the Racial Profiling Advisory Board did come to City Council when they were making changes, ordinance changes. And the City Council said they would revisit the ordinance. They have not in that period of time in 2 years. And I'm not sure how we can get the community behind us enough to let the city know the ordinance needs to be overhauled. And it needs to include many of the things that you talked about. And I think the only way we can do that is if there's a public outcry. But no matter what, we can't leave it up to the CRB to lead the ordinance change. We can't leave it up to WSU. And actually, I think their strategic plan that the city paid for, I think it's taken a new direction, and there hasn't really been transparency on that. Not with the community or not with the people who were initially appointed to be part of that process. So, but if we start with the ordinance, that would be the place to start.
Well, let me say this to you, and I appreciate those comments. I'm doing this show for one reason. There's no other media in town, whether print nor electronic, that will address this problem. And yet many of them know what this board represents and does not represent, but they won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. They have a fiduciary duty to inform the public, which they refuse to do for various reasons. So in an effort to get the public to know what the hell is going on and what the real truth is, I have to do it. And I'm happy to do it.
Well,
Walt,
I'm happy to join you in the future and share more of my thoughts and ideas and my experiences with the CRB. That comes with some risk, and I think that's why some people don't really touch the CRB and the ordinance. But I'm happy to do what I can.
I appreciate that, and anytime.
Okay.
Walt Chapel, you have any final comments?
I just want to thank you, James Barfield, for your leadership over the years. You've been an amazing person to work with. I've followed you and worked with you on a lot of major issues throughout the years, and I really compliment you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate those kind words. I do what I can. Okay, Mrs. Sellers, do you have any final comments or thoughts?
I would just like to say thank you, James Barfield, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. Because I think the one thing you said that, stood out a lot is that, you there has to be somebody who speaks for the people. And, the police investigate the police, but who speaks and protects the citizens? So I do appreciate you and, applaud you for what you do in the community.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I appreciate it. Okay, folks. Thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure being here, and we'll see you next time.